Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Big Mike Sports. We are Atlanta born, Carolina raised, Detroit driven, and I'm your host, Big Mike, Mellow Mike, Vegas Mike.
I'm back! The one and only.
And we're feeling really good today on this episode because for the first time ever on this podcast, your humble host, Big Mike, has actually predicted something that actually happened the way that we predicted it. The Vikings and Eagles on Thursday Night Football. What a game. What a crazy game. The final score being a 34-28 win for the Eagles over the Vikings. And we said that both teams would probably start slow and put it together at the end to put together a high scoring game. We predicted 31-28, so just a little off, but God, it was even worse than we imagined, really, because Kirk Cousins could not hold on to the ball, fumbling every time he touched it, it seemed. And the Jalen Hurts doing his fair share too, throwing a pretty bad interception in a double coverage. I mean, the woes really started for the Vikings on that punt return, right? The Eagles were up 3-0, deep in their own zone. They punted to the Vikings, Brandon Powell, who receives it at midfield. And he gets a really nice head of steam. It looks like it's going to be a really good return, really set up the Vikings for a good chance at scoring a touchdown and really taking control of the game. But instead, he gets hit from behind and immediately fumbles, giving the Eagles somehow a gain of like 30 yards after punting and giving them the ball back. And it just wasn't the same after that. I mean, the Vikings under O'Connell, they've been having some pretty strange little streaks with their negative 87-point differential in the first quarter in those games. And then something like 11 turnovers in the first quarters of games. Also, just absolutely monumental turnover numbers. And you just can't win games if you're starting off like that. Like, I have no idea how they were able to win so many games last year. I mean, the point differential really flips in the fourth quarter when they really made games out of it and really came back from behind, kind of like the Lions used to do with Stafford. But I mean, you can't consistently do that, right? I mean, we all knew over the course of last season that for this season, the tables would definitely turn. You wouldn't have the same record in one-score games, and it showed itself to be true. I mean, they made a game out of it at the very end, but it was just too little, too late. And the Eagles went on to win. Survived a little scare of their own. The fans were booing them early because it took them a little while for the offense to get its legs under it, but they eventually decided they were just going to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball some more. And it ended up working out for them. Jalen Hurts getting 2 touchdowns. Ended up having a really good fantasy day after a slow start. Same thing for Kirk Cousins. He ended up throwing 4 touchdowns, 2 of them to Hawkinson. So if you had Hawkinson on your team, he ended up doing pretty well. Or if you had Addison, maybe Addison went for a really long touchdown. Somebody who did not have a very good game, fantasy-wise, for the Vikings was Alexander Mattison. Now, I had him on one fantasy team, and needless to say, it felt pretty bad because early on he had like more fumbles than yards, I think, at one point. And I was going against a team in this league who had drafted Jalen Hurts third overall in the draft. So it doesn't feel very good to start off like that with Madison and being projected to lose against that team. But people have actually been sending like racist threats against Madison after his performance in that game. And that, of course, racism is obviously unacceptable in the first part, but to blame Madison for the performance when the entire Vikings offense was completely dropping the ball, did not get off the bus to start the game, that's just ridiculous. I mean, of course, the guy had a pretty bad game. He ended up recovering a little bit, but he wasn't the only one putting the ball on the ground. I mean, if you really want to blame somebody, you could blame Kirk Cousins. I mean, of course, he was able to turn around by the end of the game, and his stat line looks really good if you look at it without the context. But that's just because with him being the main guy, he's the one who it's all in his hands. He has more ability to turn around. But Madison, like once the game started getting a little out of hand early, he wasn't going to get the ball again. They weren't going to run it very much. So really, you can't blame Madison for that performance when the whole offense was really bad to start, and then they had to abandon the run. So you couldn't really give Madison a chance to really, recover from that. But moving forward, I'm not ready to panic on Madison. I mean, this is still ostensibly a good offense. I mean, time will tell if it will actually, remain how it was last year over the course of the season. But, I think it's too early to panic. I think it'll work itself out. Madison will have a couple games where he pounds in a couple rushing touchdowns or maybe has another receiving touchdown, something like that. I mean, you got to believe that with Kevin O'Connell being this offensive mind that they're going to turn it around, at least on the offensive side. Now, there are people saying, will Cousins be traded mid-season and, stuff like that? Will they end up blowing it up? But there's no way that the Vikings are going to blow it up. Like, I don't care what their record is. They're going to finish the year with the pieces that they have. They're not going to get rid of Cousins. Of course, an 0-2 start is really not what you want. It's not necessarily a dead sentence in the NFL, but it really hurts your playoff chances. Now, I did not expect the Vikings to be this bad to start the season. I mean, nobody did, right? Now I'm asking myself if they're on the same, level as the Bears. And the Bears have looked really bad. I think the Bears have looked worse than the Vikings. So maybe like 8 or 9 wins for the Vikings if they were able to turn it around, and like 6 for the Bears. I was messing around last night a little bit and just for fun put the Bears and Vikings at 6 wins. I think the Packers at 8 and the Lions at 13. Just a little pipe dream. It could still happen though. Long season left to go, but yeah, not the best start for the Vikings definitely. And the Eagles, despite their kind of slow start, they are able to pull out wins. So really no issues for them. I think that they'll still end up being fine. Although with teams playing them closer, they might end up losing in the playoffs if they keep playing like this and keep letting teams leaving the back door open. So very interesting, very telling game from both sides. And yeah, interesting story to follow over the course of the season, definitely. Big Mike's about to have a Freudian slip in this next segment, so whenever he says Ritter, he means Rattler. Yeah, so after actually making correct predictions for the first
It
time,
seems to me like you're
let's
the expert.
let's try some more for this college football weekend now. Not as many like huge matchups as week 1 or what is it, week 3 now? God, this the college football schedule always moves really fast for me. But we got South Carolina at number 1 Georgia on Saturday, which we'll have some people in the building. We'll see if we can get a little report from them later on in the maybe next week or something. But people are trying to say, maybe South Carolina could make it a game because Georgia hasn't necessarily been challenged yet this year. And against, some of their warm-up games or whatever, they haven't looked like incredible. And of course, we got a new offense in there and everything, new quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see if South Carolina is, kind of for real. They weren't able to compete with North Carolina all that well, but I think that was kind of fluky because they got kept out of the end zone so much, despite all the yards from Ritter and everything. But that'll be an interesting test of a couple SEC foes, and then a couple of highlighted games that we have for our personal rooting interests is ECU and App State, which in just a second we'll have our guy Kegger on to kind of break down that game with us, along with a little bit of NFL stuff. And also Ole Miss is going to take on Georgia Tech, and that game's probably going to be a blowout. I mean, with if you caught that Ole Miss Tulane game, Tulane played them pretty close, but then at the very end, Ole Miss just kind of ran away with it somehow. We had picked Tulane to cover, and that didn't work out too hot for us. But and then also that Georgia Tech Louisville game that we broke down a little bit when we were at Myrtle Beach with Georgia Tech keeping it close until a pretty big lapse with that fumble by Haynes King, and Louisville kind of started running away with that one as well. I think it'll end up being kind of the same thing. Maybe Georgia Tech will be able to keep it close early, but I think that Ole Miss is going to end up running away with it at the very end to prevent the cover. I'm not sure what the line is on that game, but yeah, I don't think I'm picking Georgia Tech to cover in that one. And then Tennessee at Florida. Florida, looked really, really bad to start the year against Utah. Looked like a team that was lost. Looked like a team that was poorly coached, which is not good for Billy Napier and his job. But Tennessee coming in, really high-powered offense. Joe Milton, is he the real deal? Will he be able to do maybe what Hendon Hooker wasn't able to and stay healthy all year and lead them to maybe a college football playoff berth? I don't know. I do like that Tennessee team and the offense under Josh Heupel. I've always liked Heupel as a coach, so rooting for Tennessee in that one. That one might get ugly too. We'll have to see if Florida's got some fight in them with their backs against the wall in Gainesville. And then the whole Colorado State thing against Colorado with Jay Norvell riling up Dion with the whole hat and glasses comment like, why would you even do that? Now Colorado's just going to come in and completely destroy you in their little tune-up game before they face the real big foes on their schedule, Oregon and USC. And those games will be the big test for Colorado. But, uh, maybe if you kept quiet, if you're Jay Norvell, maybe there would be a slight chance that Colorado would look over you a little bit, kind of a trap game thing. But then again, game day is going to be at Colorado for that game. So it's going to be really tough sledding if you're Jay Norvell. Like that gaff might have completely destroyed your coaching career. Yeah, we're all rooting for Dion now. I mean, he's proven everybody wrong. Of course, he's brash doing it, and we didn't necessarily agree with some of the things he was saying earlier in the offseason. But he's really trying to make a statement this year. So I'm excited to see them play against that kind of level of competition in Oregon, USC. But in just a second, we'll have Kegger to help us break down App State ECU.
It's indescribably beautiful.
There's another special guest. This is Kegger. If you remember him from Myrtle Beach, ECU, UNC Homer, also Falcons fan. What's up, Kegger?
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be back on the show.
Yeah, so I talked about that Falcons game a little bit yesterday. It seemed like kind of a game that nobody really wanted to win. Of course, the Falcons did end up coming out with the win thanks to the two rushing touchdowns by Algier at the very end. But I mean, what did you see from the team as a whole? I mean, the offense was pretty. I don't know, Ritter. I don't know about him so much, but
Yeah, I don't know. If, like top wide receiver Drake London only had one target the whole game. I mean, if you're gonna throw the ball, you need to target him more. I knew it was gonna be a low scoring game just because the Falcons and Panthers are rebuilding the offense with two very young quarterbacks. So it was a hit or miss game for sure.
yeah, Bryce Young looked all right. He did have the two interceptions, but I mean, not the worst start ever. I mean, they didn't really throw it very deep. Either team really. Bryce Young with 146 yards and Ritter with 115. I was kind of surprised that Algier was still able to have a nice little role there, scoring two touchdowns in the second half. He had five more carries than Bijan, but Bijan got a little bit more involved in the passing game. I mean, it seems like Bijan's the only real receiver worth having. I mean, talked about this a little bit yesterday too, but Pitts is just kind of out there running wide open, but they're not really throwing it to him.
Yeah, I mean he's athletic, but I don't know. I haven't seen much from him. I don't know if the OC is using them the right way. It's a lot harder nowadays in the NFL to use the rookies the way they want to be used from the college level to the pros. So I think he has a bright future, but right now I don't really see it in Pitts. But
Yeah,
time will tell.
that's kind of what I was asking too, like whether it was just Ritter not being very good or if it was just OC and not knowing how to use them. I mean, obviously Arthur Smith's going to use his running backs a lot, but I mean, they did spend such a high pick on Pitts, so it's kind of strange that they're not really using him very much. But Matt Collins showing up a little bit with three catches in that game. Uh, that guy's been on quite a few teams, but you're still a big Hollins guy, right?
Yeah, Carolina grad. I mean, he balled out in college. He's getting a little more involved in the NFL game. He used to be just on special teams, but now it looks like the Falcons are starting to use him at wideout. He played for the Raiders a little bit, but they only really used him for special teams. So he's a big wide receiver, so only time will tell with him too.
And now you've been big on ECU all season for whatever reason. We did pick them to cover against Michigan, which they did end up doing. But kind of a tough game against Marshall last week. What did you see from ECU this so
Well,
far this year?
so going into Michigan, I mean, we didn't have high hopes or anything. We just wanted to see what we were capable of. We had plenty of chances in that game to move the ball. Just couldn't do it against Michigan. Our OC is he's kind of iffy at the beginning of the years. He was last year with Holton Ahlers. Last year we had a home game and the students ended up booing the OC off the field. He learned how to use Ahlers and Keaton Mitchell, who's now in the Ravens, and then we started playing a lot better. But the performance versus Marshall, it just shows that ECU's wide receivers are just not capable of getting open. They let Garcia throw the ball. He had all day to sit back in the pocket, but there was just nobody open. I think after last week, ECU is the bottom five in throwing or passing yards this year. So yeah, offense is just not going well for ECU right now.
Yeah, and was Garcia the starter all year? Like so
This year
far?
Yeah, so Michigan, they split two quarterbacks with Alex Finn and Garcia. Garcia is more of a runner type, and Alex Finn is more of a pocket passer. I've been watching the press conferences of the OC and Mike Houston. They both say that both of them are still competing for the job, which is not what you want to hear. But they gave Garcia the full game. He rushed for over 100 yards. He threw for maybe 70 or 80. Just this offense is not where it needs to be right now. And then going into App State, Lord knows what we'll see.
Yeah, I see that Garcia is also the leading rusher for the team so far this year. So that's kind of why I
Yeah.
was asking. Pretty tough for the offense to come to task against a usually pretty tough App State defense, and also the App State offense finding a really nice little groove with Aguilar coming in as the backup quarterback. Not really missing a beat. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, 1 interception all year, and then Nate Newell looking pretty good at the running back spot, and then even Deshaun Davis at the receiver position. He had some pretty flashy plays, so it'll definitely be a tough ask for ECU to be able to cover all those guys. But my big question to you, the most important question: ECU is a 7.5 point dog in Boone. Do you think they'll cover? Because I personally, I don't really see it happening.
Well, so what we saw in these UNC App State, UNC ran the ball all over App.
Yeah, that is
Uh,
true.
App App gives up like 240 rushing yards a game, and ECU wants to run the ball. They're like a run first offense out of the spread, and they want to open it up to throw it. With the passing game being non-existent for ECU, if App State lets them run the ball, I think they might have a chance at covering. It's a big question. It's really how does ECU come into Boone on Saturday? Do they come in with pressure on themselves to perform better, or they come in with nothing on their shoulders and they have nothing to lose? So it really depends on which team comes out. ECU's defense has showed some spurts of being really good. Against Marshall, they only held Marshall to 10 points at half, and the offense really gave up that game. They had some chances to close it out, and they ended up getting blown out. The main question is ECU's offense. ECU's defense has shown that they can play, but ECU has one touchdown all year. So who knows? And who knows who's going to be the starting quarterback? Both players are ready to play, but I wouldn't be surprised if I see Alex Finn under center on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing with App State too because they've been known to kind of blow games in Boone. Like I don't know what it is. It's usually like later in the season, but there have been some like early season losses at home for them. But it's usually against like a bigger school, like a powerhouse school. But then in late November, I remember a few times where App State would lose a really tough game against Georgia Southern at home. So we'll see. There's definitely a chance, but I don't know. ECU will definitely have to show me a little something on the field in order to make me a believer. But I was talking to Larry the other day about the UNC App State game and how Mac Brown said that he's done putting App State on the schedule because they're so tough to play. I mean, they have come out on top 2 out of 3 times. I think that one loss that they had to App State was still under Mac Jones, right? But like, what do you think about that matchup not potentially not happening anymore? And what's your outlook on UNC's season after that tough game and the season so far?
Well, I don't really like the UNC app matchup as a UNC fan. They are a tough team to play, and they do come to play. But with the talent wise, I don't think they're not very close to UNC. I mean, UNC has a lot of talent, but they come and play like they have the same talent. They did shut down the passing game. I'll give them credit for that, but they couldn't stop Amari Hampton. Um, I really want to see the defense for UNC step up. That's always been the question for UNC. The offense has always been there with Sam Howell, Marquise Williams, all of them. Now Drake May. So I mean, we have the talent on offense. We keep rebuilding, but I don't. Gene Chizik needs to make some adjustments, and I think he got exposed a lot. He doesn't press coverage. He sits back and that cost us a lot of times. There's several times in the App State game where they just ran a little curl route and the cornerbacks were 15 yards off of them. So it's just easy pitch and catch. So I think if UNC presses a little more and cleans up the defensive side of the ball, I think they'll be all right. They could have a big year and they might lose to a team that they shouldn't. They do it every year.
Yep.
They always come in with high hope, but I mean, I don't. I could see them going 10-2, or they could be 6-5. It all just depends on if the defense shows up or not.
Yeah, I remember one season a long time ago where ECU basically beat UNC with just bubble screens. So it seems like a problem that's been an issue for a while. But we'll get you out of here on this. When do you think Tez Walker's going to see the field? The NCAA is giving him a real tough time with allowing him to play.
Yeah, I don't know if UNC's given up or not yet. I've read some things on Twitter saying that they've had some more meetings, and there's an opportunity to take the NCAA to federal court. That's always an option. But I mean, everybody's for Tez Walker. Everybody knows that they screwed up. It's different if he transferred or after the rule, but he transferred before. He was enrolled in classes before the deal, and they said he could play. But now since they switched the rule, they just uh, put him ineligible. I mean, with that, that's a huge loss for UNC. I mean, they need all the help they can get on offense, recovering with the receivers gone, like Josh Downs, and he was supposed to be the second Josh Downs, basically. So it's one less target for Drake May. But I guess we'll see what happens. What UNC just tries to do.
All right, well, thanks for coming back on, Kegger. We'll see you again real soon.
All right, catch y'all later.
You what?
And I think that's a good enough show for today. We'll come back tomorrow with a little something something, maybe a little live App State ECU thing. And on Sunday, we're planning on doing a live thing for the Lions game. Hopefully, it won't be too terrible. But yeah, so plenty of stuff coming up, more guests coming. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.